everyone. Welcome to this 42 Wolfsburg fireside chat today with Olivier Crouzet, the pedagogical lead from Paris, and thereby 42 World. Has been around for a long time. I'll say a few words about him, and most importantly, allow him to say something about himself in a moment. I did want to point out that we are recording this session and we are planning to publish it. So please do be aware that that's the case. Of course, we can also cut you out in post-production or something, so don't feel held back, but just some of you might find that important. And this is in good tradition, I would say. You are the third fireside chatter. We had Vin Cerf and Drusilla Hollanda from Hive before, and now we're going a bit deeper, I guess, on the pedagogical side and on the goals, the vision that you bring to 42, Olivier. So if there's no immediate questions or comments that you want to bring in, I would suggest we get started, which is indeed a little intro and background about you, which I will ask you to complement with some spicy anecdotes that actually bring the infrastructure of your life to life. Olivier holds a master in computer science from EPITA, which is one of the French Grandes Écoles, so the famous top universities for computer science and software engineering. So you can actually very well compare the old system and the system that you help bring together and innovate and evolve. After 4 years in the industry, Olivier joined Epitech, which was or can be understood to be the first incarnation, the predecessor for 42, already used in a number of the innovative pedagogical techniques and trained people as software engineers. And now, of course, for 13 years, this is how long he spent at Epitech, and 7 years now with 42 networks, so almost 21 years, right? You're in this role of thinking about how to get people to train as software engineers in the most effective, fun, and suitable way. That was
actually a little bit more.
Please tell us.
Actually, a little bit more. I've been passionate by coding for a very long time, since I was 12 years old, something like that, on a very old Amstrad CPC computer. So naturally, I joined EPITA as the leading IT school at that time. After just 3 months in EPITA, I actually was hired by the school to be part of the technical team, and the technical team had in charge the maintaining all the network, all the computers. Actually, the computers were only in the server room, and we had a full open space with only what we call the X terminal at that time. Graphical terminal, but with no CPU at all, and everyone was connected on the same computer in the computer room. This team, it was already a Bocal at that time. In this team, we also had some pedagogical tasks and practice projects handled by this team. So all this design and all this pedagogy started a very long time ago, more than 25 years ago. And I was immersed very deeply into this way of teaching and this way of learning. Actually, it was my own experience as well, because as I was part of the staff. I was not going anymore into the lecture or the practice lab, and I was actually learning how to code on my own because we needed to create a piece of software to maintain all the computer network of the school. So I did learn exactly the same way we are trying to make our students learn today. So it's an even longer than 20 years story. After indeed a small break, I was part of an ISP, internet service provider for companies. I went back to the same school group. Epitech is part of the same group of school in higher education in France, just like Epita. And the idea was to grab all the geek and all the students who wanted to spend more time into practice, into the different technical labs at night instead of going to lecture. And we slowly improved and switched from a very classic and academic way of teaching. Through Epitech, we slowly improve toward a more practical approach with less lecture, with more facing a new problem and new kind of issues directly through the projects. And we made a lot of changes, we made a lot of experiments, and at some point we had this opportunity to create 42. And it was the direct continuity, and inside 42 for the last 8 years also, we did make a lot of changes and a lot of involvement. What 42 did look like in 2013 when we created the school was actually very different from what we are doing right now. And I finger crossed, I hope we are still keeping to have this agile state of mind to be able to make the pedagogical model evolve, trying to get some information from many different sources, many other experiments, because nowadays it's more and more common to have this different way of learning, and a lot of structure, a lot of researcher from university, a lot of schools are trying things different. The COVID, of course, helped a lot for that too. And we still need, I think, to keep a step in front of all the other schools and to keep our leading position here. So we definitely need to be aware of what is going on, and also, for example, connecting to research about neuroscience and people who are looking at what is happening in the brain to try to get new ideas on how we can implement our pedagogical model, or how we should change the pedagogical model itself. So it's something that is 25 years or more evolving and brainstorming and experiment process that is still going on.
Very cool. Let's get back to 42 and the intricacies and maybe some tips, etc. in a moment. Before we do that, I'd love to hear a bit more from you personally. And we actually had Vincerf share a little bit like you just did. You know, it's really your own upbringing, and if you want initiation into the guild of programming that defines how you think about it and what gets you motivated, etc. Vint shared that for him, this intrinsic motivation to want to know how to do something was really at the heart of the development. And in that spirit, how was it for you, and how is it for you now that you're much more proficient in the skill, the competence of programming? What keeps you motivated? How do you motivate yourself? What's the passion behind your development and you getting up every morning? What are some of the practices and habits that you found work?
I think at first it's the logic of coding that attracted me, and it was something that was very interesting for me to use all these elementary bricks and align them and create a sequence of small bricks to be able to create something and to see the actual result immediately on a computer, and that was very satisfying. It's something that is really yes, it's really satisfying when you achieve something and you can show it to other people. It's I think it's what attracted me at first. I would say that today coding is still something that I really love. From the very beginning, I've been very passionate by everything around computer graphics. And my very first piece of code very quickly were related to drawing something on a screen or in a window. Well, on my CPC and Amstrad, it was actually just one unique graphical screen. There was no window at all, but it was always this drawing aspect, how to code the image, and it was something that was very attractive to me. And I kept involved in this. In Epitech, I designed all the graphical branch of the curriculum, and one of the big game that really hit me, and I was completely I would say crazy when I first saw this game the very first time. It was back in 2015. It was before I went to Epita. It was Wolfenstein 3D. It was a very first first person game, and you are inside a maze and you are facing some guys you need to kill. But it was a graphic design of this game that was very amazing for me, and it was the very first time we had such kind of game. All the game before that were some platform games, just like Mario Bros. Or it was something that was very very innovative. It was a breakthrough regarding the game, and I always wanted to replicate this game. And I went through ray tracing about trying to recreate some cube, and I discovered on my own all the ray casting algorithm that is needed to create this game. And I was very happy when I bought my first book about how to recreate your own Doom engine or Duke Nukem engine. And I was very happy to realize that all my deduction was actually exactly what was written on that book. And it was again very satisfying to realize that I did found on my own all the tips and tricks to be able to create such kind of game. I did create the mini Olympics for the students at Epitech, and we are also using it at 42 right now. And just 2 years ago, I switched from C and Unix X display and to the Swift and Metal approach for new Mac OS. And it was also something that was fun for me. And currently, my hobby is more into VR, creating some VR games. I've created already 2 VR games that are available online. Everyone can download them because they're free, and I'm currently ending a new one. So it gives some idea for upcoming project for the curriculum. If I'm sure that most campus can afford to have some VR device for the students, and it's something that will be brought soon to the curriculum. For example, my second project was a proof of concept for a VR escape game. And I actually made 3 levels instead of just one very simple level. And so that's why I put it online for everyone. And the project is almost already completed, and it will be soon in the second part of the curriculum for all our students, as long as they have access to some VR device. So yes, I'm still coding. And you talk initially about my passion, and I think that the pedagogy was not actually my passion at the very beginning, but going through all this experiment is still something that is fun and very interesting for me, and it became my passion. It was not something that hit me from the very beginning. I've been involved slowly in such kind of reflection and such kind of experimentation, and through time, thinking about the way people are learning, the psychologist aspects of learning, the neuroscience learning, the previous experimentation. I get more and more documentation on information on pedagogy through time, and I think it also became something that really interests me. And I have very often a lot of discussion with family members, for example, regarding what we are doing, of course, but trying to explain our choices and also to react on some specific situation. My kids live at school, or some specific situation my wife is facing at home, because she's kind of a specialist for young children in primary school that have some anxiety regarding success at school, and she is trying to help such kind of children, and it's very well related to what we are doing in 42, or how to address different way of learning, and realizing that from one student to another, the motivation level are different. What can prevent a good way of learning also can vary. It can change from one student to another, and it's always very interesting discussion, and it's something that I really like to do with anyone in my 42 context, or in my personal and family context as well.
Very cool and very comprehensive. Two quick comments before we move to the next part, which I'm sure our PCners will love when we go more into the 42 technologies and platforms and choices you made. But first of all, as we discussed, but I want to share with the PCners and those watching later, we do have an augmented reality, a virtual reality lab in the school. And so we are very eager to learn and implement the games and the program that you're already working with in terms of extending the curriculum. And when you described earlier how you enjoy creating and really seeing the direct results of what you are programming, there is one quote from Arthur Clarke, the science fiction writer, that we like quite a bit, and that's, "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." And being a little bit a nerd into that sci-fi and fantasy world genres myself, I think, the idea of using a command to trigger something somewhere else and to, basically unleash things by using words and, using spells. If you want, an algorithm is a long spell. I think the analogies are actually quite strong, and it's a nice way to think about what you're doing, creating worlds and defining certain outcomes that you can trigger.
But you know that in most countries, ICT is something that is very close to science and is very related to engineer schools very often. And from my perspective, actually, ICT and especially coding is more close to an art, and because if you are taking even a very simple coding challenge that we can have during the PCN, at least I think that you start from the week number 2 of the PCN, and people are starting to reach the project number 10 of the PCN. You can start to have very small piece of code, but even with 150 or 200 people at the same time doing the same project, you will have 200 different piece of code because you can solve the same problem in different ways. Sometimes it will be the same algorithm, but with some just difference, small difference. Sometimes you will have bigger differences, but with exactly the same feature and the same result at the end. So there is no one unique way of coding something, and that's something. It's very creative approach from my perspective. So that's why I think it's definitely connected to art. It's a way to express yourself when you are coding. You are coding things and solving problem in your own way, and exchanging with other, and seeing that there are different paths that can reach the same goal and the same point. It's always interesting to make such kind of comparison, and to see that well yes, it's just like an art. It's a personal creation when you are coding something.
Very much agree. Indeed, you could argue that art is becoming more and more digitized, right? And that artists are
Also,
also
yeah.
using code. Thomas Bornheim and myself recently stumbled upon the processing language. I don't know if you came across that project from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. It's basically a programming environment for art. So yeah, it's all organized around creating visual outcomes. And
on Paris campus, in the lobby, you have one of the very first painting created by an AI.
Sweet. Yeah, this is exactly where I was going next, is that now the data is being processed and spit out again. So it becomes much more of an interaction with real life and breathing, almost, a live entity that is reacting to the outside world. You can go all the way to the visualization of outcomes, right? When it comes to research in cancer or medicine or other parts of science, where it's really only the machines that give you an interpretation of what you're seeing by somebody assigning colors and forms to certain outcomes. I think it's going a little bit too deep on that end, but that's fine. We're in a fireside chat, so we can rally on some stringence. Dear PCners, you will be taking over the show in a little bit, at least my part of the show. We want to hear from you and get as many questions in as possible. So we have 2 more blocks. One where we'd love to hear from you, Olivier, about the current status, what projects you already alert to the VR one, what current work streams and improvements, opportunities and challenges do you see for 42? And is there something where you say, okay, in 5 years, I'd love to see us do X as a 42 network, as a conglomerate and a network of schools?
Yes, in 5 years, I'd like to see at least 50 campuses all across the globe, and I I would really like to see a lot of students exchanging from every campuses and building something that is cross-campus and that is cross-cultural as well, and people from all over the globe gathering and working together to reach some goal. And I would love to do that, and then to create their own company. And And of course that the next Facebook or the next Google will be created by someone from 42. Actually, I already lived this with Epitech, my previous ICT school, because one of my students was Salomon Hikes. He's a founder of Docker, the famous company who is very much used in many cloud system so far, and of course as part of his own training, I'm very proud of this. I would love to see such kind of success story in 42 as well, but I know it will take a little bit of time. We already had some success story in 42, like recast.ai that have been bought by SAP, and probably a lot more to come. But of course, with much more campuses and very more international teams and very international entrepreneur teams, it will be better, and we will have probably more innovation here. It's what we have already seen with mixing our students with business students or with art and design students, and the mix and the diversity is something that is very powerful. It already works because of social diversity inside our own campuses, because of school diversity with a no degree requirement. We can have students who drop out of public education at 16 years old, and at the same time people with two different master degrees, and it's having such kind of mix is already very interesting inside our campuses. But having cultural diversity and creating teams, entrepreneur teams from people across all the different campus and all our network, it will also probably bring some very interesting innovation for the entire world. So I hope that we'll be able to succeed and to reach this point. My other deep will regarding the network is to be able to show in a very clear way that people can learn in a different way, and that not everyone fits into the same academic model of learning, and to be a giant open door to every citizen, not only the specialists in pedagogy, not only the teacher, and not only the politics who are responsible for handling a public curriculum and public education system, but also every single citizen to be sure to understand that, okay, maybe I should try to figure out where my children would be, what would be the best environment for my children to learn and to progress in a positive way, and to not be stressed because of the school, to not be in a situation to face the failure, stigmatization if he can't handle this, and to be aware that learning is something that is more agile, that can be that there can be diversity into learning, and everyone should be aware of that and should have the choice. I would love to see that our experiment bring this idea, this general idea, to the general population, so it gives more idea to business school, in higher education or medical school, but also in primary school, in secondary school, in high school, to have from kindergarten up to the job several possibilities at each level, because also probably people are not open at the same time to be part of the same pedagogical context. And maybe for someone, it should be better to be more free and more flexible, just like we are in primary school, but not in high school, or the opposite, I don't know. And to have a lot of gateway through all these different pedagogical system. And I would love to think that we can initiate such kind of big brainstorming on each country where we have a campus. So it will, from my perspective, increase critical thinking, increase inclusion, increase diversity, and it's something that is good because it's part of the value of 42 we choose. It's something that should be also the value of all school all over the world. Unfortunately, it's not exactly the case, or it's complicated to increase such kind of value, such kind of skills. But I would love to see this ideology spread much broader than just our network.
Well, in this case, I think I can speak for the colleagues. You can count us in from the Wolfsburg side. We're very excited to join you on that journey and do the brainstorm, and especially the evolution and the moving forward. That sounds really, really cool. Maybe one more point on 42. You have seen many piscines and many PCners.
Yeah.
Our folks are, of course, in a somewhat special situation. As you know, we are implementing our second remote piscine right now. So
Yeah.
they had 1 week of joint camping, of getting to know each other and the tools. And now they have been programming since Monday. So just to give you a sense of where they are in the process. But maybe generally, what are techniques, approaches, habits that you saw make up a successful PCner?
Well, usually the first advice we are giving is that people should rest before the piscine and should not try to anticipate what's going on, and should not try to anticipate some technical stuff, or start learning coding in C or whatever. Spontaneity, spontaneous approach is, from my perspective, something that is very important, because PC is not only a challenge. It's not only a selection process. It's also a place where you need genuinely to figure out if the 42 curriculum, if coding, if the peer learning is something that is suitable for you. We usually attract all our applicants, telling them, just try the selection process and see what happens. So if you are including some biases in the selection process and trying to prepare yourself, usually maybe you won't realize if it's at some point it's not for you. You can get, of course, maybe you get better chance to get admitted if you are preparing and trying to learn some code before doing the piscine, but maybe you will miss that actually it's not the best solution for you to learn ICT. ICT can be your hobby, you can be very passionate of it, but it does not mean that 42 is the best way for you to learn ICT. So I think that taking the piscine just like it is and just living the experience will reveal if it's truly something for you, if it's something that is maybe, if you are not feeling at ease, well, all the curriculum will be exactly the same. So at some point, we don't want to admit students that will drop out after 3 or after 6 months, because it takes time for them to realize that it's not the best way for them to learn coding. So to have a genuine approach to the piscine is probably my best advice here.
Cool. Thank you, Olivier. I'm sure when we go to the Q&A, there will be more specific questions. So I leave it here. And as we discussed before, and to share with our PCners who might hear this for the first time, we actually plan to have a library with books, but also an online space with recommendations for resources that are recommended by people that we respect and like and consider thought leaders and authorities in the field of software engineering and or happiness. So we call the conglomerate of resources the Manual for Happy Software Engineers. And the guidance is it should contain stuff that has value, that has a long half-life. So no books that are out of date within a couple of years. So it's totally okay to recommend things that inspired you, Olivier, some time ago, things that are only partially related to software engineering, because I think it all creates a mindset. Right? Books and these kind of, I would call it brain food. The brain food that you eat, right, makes up the way you look at the world. And I think that's what we're looking for. Do you have a recommendation or two for us and our students?
Well, I'm a geek just like my students, and in my early days, being a geek was strongly connected to sci-fi. I guess it's still a little bit the case for a new generation as well. So part of my reading, part of my books, I've got all the trilogy in 15 books from Isaac Asimov. From the robots to all the foundation cycle, and a lot of very classic sci-fi, Back to the Future, 2001, and The Matrix, The Terminator. Of course, when you have some kind of computer stuff related, it's something that is always interesting for me, or something that is space related. Because if you are in space, you usually always have some interesting computer in the aboard on the spaceship, or so. Always like such kind of books and literacy and of course movies. Apart from sci-fi, regarding books, I would say that classic Agatha Christie's have been part of my of my book I read when I was younger. If I'm trying to figure out today what kind of things I'm reading, I think I'm more connected to maybe to interesting TED Talks, not necessarily in pedagogy, but we have very great TED Talks in pedagogy, but also in more general science related topics. And also sometimes in a psychological approach and how to understand the brain, the human, and the relationship between people. Sometimes it's quite interesting, I would say. And I know that I'm also having some small readings about newsletters from think tanks, for example, usually related to tech and education. It's something that is very often connected in many conferences, and it's always interesting to see how people are experiencing tech into education or education with tech and mixing them. And sometimes it gives very interesting ideas to improve the pedagogical model of 42, of course. And I had at some point more pedagogic only oriented book. I did read some book from Jean Piaget, the famous Swiss pedagogist, like Psychology and Pedagogy. I think it's the name of the book. I did read the main book from Maria Montessori, I can't remember the name exactly, talking about all this experiment with a young child and explaining that not everyone is ready to learn the same thing at the same time. Your brain needs to be in a special state to be able to learn something new, and that's why all the Montessori approach leaves a lot of freedom for the children to learn what they want, when they want, and it's a different way of progression through the standard and academic curriculum. I had a very interesting talk with Philippe Mérieux because he's supervising a special experiment about the Célestin Freinet pedagogy. Célestin Freinet was a teacher in primary school near Nice, south of France. And it was 100 years ago, and he had a very different and interesting approach, and this approach has been replicated in a public school in France, from primary school to the high school degree. So it's one of the very unique experiments in public education in France. And this guy, who is a real specialist in pedagogy for a long time, he wrote a lot of books and about active pedagogy, and he was supervising this experiment, and it brings a lot of very interesting results regarding the way we can teach to younger child.
Very cool, and what a tour de force through the thought leaders that came before you, that 42 is building on, as was pointed out in the chat, right? Some thinkers on the really origin of developmental psychology and pedagogy. We really like Mitchell Resnick's Lifelong Kindergarten. That is also more about how children learn, right? Where we want to adopt the fun aspects, and the playfulness, I think, is really important. Like the learning you do when you have to, when you're forced by school or university, feels quite dry in many ways, while learning can be such a passionate and
yes.
powerful.
And we do realize usually that not everyone is motivated by the same thing at the same time as well. So we need to use different motivation level at the same time. And for example, we know that the gamification that we have right now in the 42 curriculum, it's very well appreciated by some students, but other students don't care because it's not what is motivating them today. Maybe it was the case, I don't know, a year ago, or maybe it will be the case in 6 months or in a year. But things are changing and are usually also related to your own personal situation. So we need to offer some flexibility and also different possible approach for a student to keep its own motivation.
Awesome. So without more interruptions from me, let's get in some questions and the conversation with our PCners. Konstantin, you have been waiting patiently. At least you had the chance to pick your hat. So ready to rock, please, the microphone.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, very nice. So I was just wondering, especially because you mentioned that you think that programming is kind of similar to art, if you think that maybe not as a replacement, but maybe as like an alternative. I'm sorry, an alternative to like, let's call it, I don't know, usual education. The 42 model could also be applied to like other sectors of education, such as art, or maybe some more. I don't know which ones, because I can't imagine Pia teaching somebody how to be a doctor. But do you think that something like that would be possible in the future? And is that something that 42 might like pursue to like expand their horizon maybe in what they are teaching at the schools?
We have been asked very often such kind of question from business school, from medical school as well. We definitely think it's possible. Not the problem here, but the fact that all the staff in 42 are mainly geek people who are living through IT, using IT every day, who are playing video games just like the students. And we are developing and updating the pedagogical model using IT as a learning topic, but also as a support for the pedagogical model. So it's probably complicated for us to, we are mixing both of them. It's complicated for us to have a strong separation and saying, okay, this is the pedagogical model with, you need this kind of IT support for it. And then you can connect it with some business experts to create a business school with the same approach. We will probably need an external view of an external analysis of our pedagogical model to be able to replicate it. I strongly believe it's possible. First, because I mentioned some connection with Piaget, Montessori, Freinet, for example, and these people had the same kind of approach. It was in very small teams because there was no IT at that time, but it was from primary school mainly, or for even younger children. So I think that everything can be taught this way. And on the other hand, I think it's also possible because of the development of strong possibilities in simulation. You mentioned about being a surgeon. I think it's possible to experiment and train yourself through VR or through mechanical design and some kind of automated robots or something like that. And to be able to test and realize that if you are doing this, well, you are cutting the aorta, and then you have blood everywhere, and it's you failed, and you need to start over. What is interesting in in 42 and in learning ICT that we do have a huge sandbox that is called a computer, and you can program anything. You can get wrong as much as you want. At the very bad problem, you need to reinstall all the operating system, but there is no harm at the end. There is no strong consequence if you are mistaking and if you are doing something wrong. So you need to be able to have such kind of sandbox, and you need to be able to replicate this very consequence-free learning environment and testing environment. So I think with simulation, it's possible. I don't know for you guys, I know in France, if you are creating your own company and you are failing, then you can't, it's forbidden for you during 5 years or 10 years to create again your own company. So in business school, you need to have such kind also of a simulation environment where you can create your own company, take your own decision, and have a powerful tool that will say, okay, this is happening to you, this is happening to you, and according to your action, your company is completely failing, and you lost the game. You need to start over. I think it's more and more possible right now to duplicate such kind of things. But you also need to have probably again, an agile point of view on how you can do this. We had this discussion with an agriculture school. They wanted to know how we could adapt such kind of pedagogical approach when your job is to make potatoes or carrot grow. And we were thinking about some different strategy, because you can say, okay, we are in September or you are in November. I want carrots for April. I'm trying this. Okay, 6 months later, okay, it failed, so I have to try again, but you have to wait a full year again. So it's complicated. So you can have different approach, saying that, okay, this first 1 square meter will be for this approach, and I'm doing what I want on my own. The next square meter will be 2 people at the same time thinking about how we can have our carrot grow better. The third square meter will try to do this in team of 5 people. Then the next one, we will change how much water we give to the carrot during the next 6 months. And so you can have at the same time, different experiments to be able to see what are the different results and still stay on your own perception, because you created all these 10 experiments at the same time. So you probably need to have an agile way of practice and experimentation if you are not doing ICT but you are doing agriculture, and it's probably the same. You need to rethink a lot and to be a real expert and people who has some real experience in practical approach on the specific learning topic.
Thank you so much.
Very cool, Olivier. I think we have time for one more at least. Evangelos, please come in with your question.
Hi, thank you very much. I was, as you may know, we started our PCner 2 days ago, and I'm having some hard time to explain to my friends and colleagues and people from the job that I'm trying to be accepted in a school that has no teachers. And I thought the other day I was thinking if that it would be great if 42 could potentially expand to other areas like electrical engineering or mechanical engineering. If you have a thought about expanding 42 to other areas as well, not only to other countries.
So far, it's not part of the plan. Indeed, electrical companies, maybe it's more related than business. I don't know. We did not have such kind of opportunity, but anyway, we will need to have some people who will take time to make a lot of experiments regarding electrical engineering and stuff like that. I think that what you mentioned about electrical engineering, it's interesting because it's, from my perspective, something that is already part of a very classic vocational training. And it's something that actually exists in a practice approach very much often than a classical or regular engineer school. So probably it would be possible to have such kind of approach. I'm not sure that right now it's maybe more a political choice to say, okay, we just stuck with ICT, and ICT is already something that is very diverse because it's used in all the different fields of the economy. It's not just creating website and creating mobile app, but it's also helping the all the medical field. It's helping all the agricultural field. It's helping all the social field, and it's something that is used nowadays by all companies, big companies, small companies, whatever the field of the economy. I think it's already a very huge sector, well, because it concerns actually all the economy. So it's already a training that can bring very diverse students to very diverse careers. I'm not sure that today it would make sense to do that. There is also the historical reason. 42 have been created by Xavier Niel. He's owner of a telecom company, and he's lacking for ICT profiles. So that's why he decided to create 42 and to develop interesting ICT profile for his own company. I'm not sure that we have the vocation for that. But having some partnership, some connection, and to have someone who is willing to create such kind of electrical engineering school using the same kind of model, the same kind of approach, from my perspective, we could have a relationship to explain them how this works and how we are dealing every day-to-day challenges and problem, what kind of solution we are using, and to have a deep dive into our model and try to extract what is needed for him to replicate such kind of approach. I think it could be interesting indeed, and it could be also possibly easier as a first step to see what could be the 42 pedagogical model in something else than ICT. And because the gap between ICT and business is probably a little bit higher and more complex and more difficult, and it will be more also more difficult to talk to each other and to exchange and to make the business people understand our vision, our feelings, because maybe we are not talking exactly the same language. We know that collaboration is a strong skill here, but sometimes it's not always very easy, and probably being connected to such kind of more technological oriented school could be indeed more interesting and more easy to imagine replicate the model.
Okay, I say thank you very much.
Thanks, Olivier. Also, in the case of 42 Wolfsburg, I can add that the Fab Lab, in a way, is a space where, similar to the electronics lab in Paris, right, that there is, how to say, a spectrum, a path from, the electrical knowledge and kind of more traditional ways that are not digital, and then pieces that become more and more programmable and IoT-like in this field. So yeah, definitely something where you're welcome to experiment almost on a grassroots level, right? What projects work, what areas might be particularly well suited for the approach and which are not, etc. So I think in the spirit that Olivier described, try and error and being open to new areas and experiences is the way to go here. Time flew by, at least for me. It feels like we just connected a minute ago, but it's already a little past 6. So it's my sad job to keep the time. And thank you, Olivier. That's not a sad job.
You're welcome.
That's a very nice job. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a pleasure working with you so far. And this meeting just confirmed that the journey to evolve and implement the vision and dreams of 42 are a joint venture, and we hope to have brought some insights to our PCners as well. Let's keep in touch and give us some feedback in the feedback forms when you review the event. And with that, I close the meeting, and I'm looking forward to hear from the PCners tomorrow and see you probably sometime next week, Olivier. Thank you.
Thanks to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.